Get ready to take a flamethrower to the official narrative and learn what the elites don't want you to know. You're listening to The Tom Woods Show.
Hi, everybody. Tom Woods here. It's episode 2702 of The Tom Woods Show. We got our old friend Jack Hunter here from the Rand Paul Review. You can check that out at randpaulreview.com. I bet you didn't know there was such a thing, but now you do. And you're a happier person for knowing it. Jack and I go back a long time, like the very beginning of this whole Ron Paul revolution. And I think even before that, Jack, even before that.
For sure.
So let's talk about even though these things happened a number of days ago by now, I haven't talked to you since then, and I would still like to hash them out because I think some of the things that are fleeting that happen and there are headlines about them and then they're forgotten. There are still, I don't know, lessons for the future. There's still interesting bits and pieces of what's going on in America to be found in them. Like, for instance, this whole No Kings protest. I think there's a lot to be learned about the state of the Democratic Party, the divide in the country. I think there's a lot to be learned about that. And so even though it's over, I think it's still worth talking about. So, I mean, the thing is, there are plenty of things you can joke about with this No Kings protest. You hardly know where to begin, especially when you see some of the footage. I mean, some of the footage is silly, and some of the footage is downright sinister. What's your take on it?
Well, it's all of that and more, and it's very funny. I can't talk about this without smiling or laughing a little bit. It's so silly that to any outsider who observed American politics in recent times for more than 10 seconds, how stupid this thing was. A positive note before I get into the criticisms, it looks like most of the people at the different cities that participated in this No Kings rally, and to be clear, these were people who are against Donald Trump, who they perceive as a king, and, that's so unique in this new threat. Most of them were like 60 plus and white. Like not a lot of young people came to these things. A police department, one major city, they even said that, like, this is older people. We're not really worried about riots or anything like that. So what that tells me, there's polling out there that shows that younger Republicans and even evangelical conservatives aren't as rah-rah pro-Israel as their elders, who are probably watching Fox News more, just like these No Kings people are probably watching MSNBC more. That's an older white audience. The younger people are getting their information from independent media, podcasts like this, and they get a different perspective because there's not that pro-Israel agenda that pervades all of establishment media. The No Kings protest themselves, let's talk about how stupid this is. So they're protesting Donald Trump because they think he's a king and doing authoritarian things. I voted for the man, and I think he's doing authoritarian things I don't like, and I can say that out loud. But I'm not going to say, boy, when Barack Obama sees those AP reporters' computers, just, the DOJ and FBI or whatever just went in there and snatched up Associated Press reporters' computers because they wanted to see what the information on them, that's probably an attack on free press. That's probably something a king would do. The COVID situation during the pandemic, of which Donald Trump and Joe Biden bore responsibility, but none of those people at the No Kings protest were like, how dare you shut down my business, President Biden? How dare you not let my kids go to school, President Biden? Do you think you're a king? None of them did that. You can talk about speech, you can talk about foreign intervention, we can go on and on, but it's so hypocritical on its face that if you're not laughing at it and you're deep in that bubble, well, you're part of the problem.
I liked what Michael Tracy had to say about it. Let me share that. He says, it's a really weird phenomenon to have protest movements that are overwhelmingly populated by older people. Median age of resistance and No Kings must be like 55. Well, thankfully, I'm younger than that median. That makes me feel slightly better. Anytime you start talking about age these days, I get kind of prickly. But then he goes on to say, younger people maybe aren't that excited by a quote-unquote movement whose primary objective is to restore Dems to power. And then he also says, 99% of the No Kings protesters would have their grievances fundamentally redressed simply by putting in a Democratic president. That's what makes it so lame. It's just standard partisan angst dressed up with loftier sounding language.
That's exactly right. That is 100% right. Look, when Matt Taibbi and Schellenberger and some of the other people who were involved in the Twitter files testified before Congress, hey, the Biden administration pressured, jawboned, however you want to put it, the Biden administration forced X to censor speech, whether it was about the Hunter Biden laptop or things they didn't like about COVID. When Matt Taibbi went before Congress, the Democratic members of Congress made fun of him. They and Democrats at large either ignored the Twitter files and this mass breach of the First Amendment that happened with all that, or they made fun of the reporters or got mad at them. How dare you report on our guy, Joe Biden, censoring people's speech? That's what they did. So now we get to this place where like Jimmy Kimmel's not on TV for 5 days, and they said that, the FCC pressured or whatever. I don't like how Trump handled that. I think it was bad, but it was not the act of a king. Jimmy Kimmel came back. So the Biden administration en masse censoring American speech for months and years or however long it was to them. That's not dictatorial, behavior, but you see what I'm getting at. I mean, the hypocrisy is rank. When Kamala Harris ran in 2024, when she ran for president, she would say on the campaign trail, and I'm going to sick the DOJ on any of these platforms that spread hate speech or misinformation or disinformation. And those Democratic audiences said, yay, that's great. That's why we're voting for you, Kamala. That's what we want. That's the act of a king. So Michael Tracy's absolutely right. What they want is a Democrat to do what they're protesting, which is what they had before with Biden, Obama, and would have had with Kamala Harris. That's what these people are actually wanting.
Let me say in parentheses for anybody who is, I don't know, an audio or video file, what I was telling you, Jack, just very quickly, the Woods household has an internet issue. Downloads are great, uploads not so good. So I can't use the normal platform I use to record this show. I've been having this problem for about a month. I can't use StreamYard because the connection isn't stable enough. So in 2 days, it's being fixed. But in the meantime, we're recording this on Zoom, and it has all the issues Zoom has. But at least it exists. Good old Zoom. But when you look at the video clips from this thing, that just random clips. Now, I should say, here I am trying to be fair to people who, not in a million years would they care about being fair to me, but I'm sure that at Ron Paul events, you could find one oddball who was advocating crazy things. If you really tried, maybe you could. So I don't want to suggest that everybody, but I've seen poll numbers about how these people feel about Charlie Kirk getting shot. So I have a feeling I know where they stand. But the video clips ranged from really goofy like dance routines, which with mostly older Americans in them, to all the way to there was an elementary school teacher, a woman, who I guess saw a Charlie Kirk fan and in her gestures recreated the scene of his shooting. I mean, she recreated his death in front of that guy, which is, if you and I did that, we'd never hear the end of it. It'd be the end of the world. We're all crazy Nazis who love death. But this is just normal behavior for people like that. And when you look at that, you really do think, all right, they're telling us something about who they are. I don't know what percentage of people on that side really do crave or would explain away and excuse violence. But it's higher than it ought to be. We can say that.
Yeah. And I'd love to see, I don't know how you would gather hard data on that in one way, but so I agree with you. I'm seeing the same thing. The thing that surprised me post Charlie Kirk's assassination, and we saw it with this No Kings thing, what is the American left's identity in this moment? So in past times when like Bernie Sanders was popular at AOC, they wanted socialism. Before the identity politics thing got big on the left, which is a primary identity for the left now, Bernie Sanders told his party, we should talk about working class issues again and socioeconomic, sort of traditional, socialism light stuff that American Democrats have done forever. That's where you want to concentrate. You and I, and maybe the audience doesn't agree with that, but that's what the party was.
Yeah.
Now it's this odd mixture of neoconservatism. You see it mostly with the Ukraine-Russia thing where, Bill Kristol and Liz Cheney are saying the same thing about Trump's relationship with Putin as most Democrats, that he's a Putin puppet and all that kind of stuff. So you got that neocon thing going on with the mainstream Democratic Party. This is most Democratic voters I know and vote. That's part of it. You've got the identity politics thing where it's not about, the content of your character. It's definitely about the color of your skin, what's going on with your genitals and your gender identity and all that. And then you mix that in with the illiberal.
Sorry, Jack. What's going on with your genitals just made me
That's
laugh.
important to them. You know what I'm saying? The stuff or whatever. And, I'm just saying what the left's identity is right now. It's
I hear you.
a neoconservatism, identity politics, and also diminishing liberalism. They don't have any respect for free speech anymore. They would snatch it away from you if you disagree. If you're MAGA, you don't have a right to speak. Thank God the Biden administration suppressed speech on X during that time. That's how they really feel. And then you take it to the extent of, well, maybe political assassinations aren't so bad. Because that's what I saw. That's what shocked me. I expected hard lefties to be that gross, right? But when I'm out and about, and, I'm a musician before I did this politics stuff, a lot of my friends are left-leaning. I try not to talk about politics with them because I value our friendships over that. But in casual conversation, you would see it and hear it. They thought that the Charlie Kirk assassination was somewhere between, well, he had it coming, or hell yeah, that was great. I mean, that was sort of the span for most of the Democrats I encountered. I heard one or two say it was horrible, but once again, I don't know the polling data, but we're in a different place. And you saw that with the No Kings rally. If these older white people felt, inspired to go out and protest King Trump and making, quote, hand gestures, that's where they're at. And that's where you would find, as you just noted, somebody making fun of Charlie Kirk being shot in the neck. If Nancy Pelosi was assassinated, be like, that is horrible. That would be my first gut thing to say. Not her politics. I would expect the same from you, Tom, or any sane, morally centered person, no matter their politics. Socialists on the far right, in between. No, we don't support political assassinations in this country, anywhere on the spectrum. But we've got to a point where the left is so depraved, and really all they have left is like this deep hatred for Trump, MAGA, and all that represents. Charlie Kirk certainly was a part of that equation, and that brand that he got murdered is good to them. They think that's a good thing. That's sad. So either they, one of my favorite Democrats right now is Ro Khanna. If you pay attention to him, very good on, anti-war guy. I don't agree with him on economics, as I don't most Democrats, but he will say to his party, are we going to be a party that just sees hatred for Trump for the next 10 years, or are we going to be for something positive? And I was talking to a Democratic friend who also liked Ro Khanna, and they said, well, maybe he can be a leader for the party. I'm like, you're not there yet. Your side's not there. The left's not there yet. And he said, what do you mean? Ro Khanna does not possess that deep hatred that unifies all of you. You saw it on full display at No Kings. You saw it on full display, the many people on the left cheering Charlie Kirk's assassination. That hate binds them together more than anything else they got going on right now. And that's a sad place to be.
Hey, gang, if you've ever searched for your name or address in Google, I bet you were shocked to find how many results contained your personal information. That information is out there: your name, address, phone number, financial info, income, hundreds of other records. And it can be sold and shared publicly without your consent. I can't imagine Tom Woods Show listeners could really be at peace with that. And despite guidelines indicating how people search sites should and shouldn't be used, criminals have been known to use the information on these sites to target their victims. One identity thief used the data of 51 individuals, which they acquired from a people search site, to take out thousands of dollars in fraudulent loans. But Incogni is here to put an end to all that. You sign up, give them permission to act on your behalf, and they go out and demand that data brokers delete your personal info. You don't have to email anyone, fill out forms, or jump through hoops. They handle the entire data removal process for you. Its professionals will handle any objections and keep checking back in to make sure your information stays off these sites. And now they've introduced something huge: custom data removals. With their new unlimited plan, you can copy and paste any link where your info shows up on sites beyond their usual list, and their privacy team will work to get it taken down. Incogni's privacy experts actually go in and handle the removal manually, even from sites that are harder to deal with. It's like having a privacy SWAT team on speed dial. Right now, you can get 60% off their annual plans by heading to incogni.com/woods and using code WOODS at checkout. It's also completely risk-free. Incogni offers a 30-day money-back guarantee if you're not satisfied with their removal of your personal information off the internet. Live free from dangerous spam by using Incogni. That's incogni.com/woods for 60% off their annual plans. Hey everybody, because of inflation, we assume everything these days is expensive. But some things still aren't. In fact, 72% of Americans think life insurance costs more than it really does. And Policy Genius makes finding and buying life insurance fast, easy, and surprisingly affordable. In fact, see if Policy Genius can help you find 20-year life insurance policies starting at just $276 a year for $1 million in coverage. Policy Genius helps you compare your options by getting quotes from America's top insurers in just a few clicks to find coverage that fits your needs and your budget. Talk to a team of licensed agents who will walk you through the process step by step. They answer your questions, handle paperwork, and advocate for you throughout the process. They lay out all your options clearly: coverage amounts, prices, terms, no guesswork, just clarity. Life insurance is a form of financial planning, and Policy Genius is the country's leading online insurance marketplace. And they have thousands of 5-star reviews on Google and Trustpilot. Well, secure your family's future with Policy Genius. Head to policygenius.com to compare life insurance quotes from top companies and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com. Well, I think a lot of people noted at the time of the time Trump was shot, that it's very weird, the position that let's say Democrats have put themselves in, where Trump's Hitler, but if you try to shoot him, it's, our hearts go out to his family. Our heart goes out to Hitler's family. I hope Hitler's family is feeling all right after that out of the blue attack on Hitler. We are totally against assassinating Hitler. It's just, what? Like, what are you talking about? None of this makes sense, right? And I mean, who knows on what level do they actually think Trump is literally, is actually Hitler? I do try to have fun with people on so-called X once in a while, and I'll say, well, the number of concentration camps is still holding at 0, and they'll say, yeah, but they were 0 during much of Hitler's reign too. And all right, well, $10,000 right now says to each of our favorite charities, says there will be no concentration camps during any of Trump's tenure, that he will not seek a third term or any of this other crazy stuff that you're thinking. If you really believe this stuff, this is the easiest $10,000 for your favorite charity you've ever gotten. And of course, they go missing at that point because they know. Come on, right? You actually think that's going to happen?
No, I think some have worked themselves into such a lather that they really do believe this stuff.
So I should be making money off these people.
Right. Well,
force them to bet me. Really? What would the Vegas odds be on the setting up of concentration camps? So I don't want to do it on Vegas because I'd probably have to it'd probably be like a 1,000,000,000 to 1 odds. Wouldn't be worth doing the bet. So we won't use Vegas. We'll have no middleman. I'll just bet them directly. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, they should put up or shut up. I'm
by the way, Malice did this. Michael Malice did this. So there was somebody who believed in the QAnon thing.
Right.
Who was saying that I think the claim was that by a certain date, there would be mass arrests of either congressmen or people, in the deep state. Mass arrests would be occurring. Malice said there'd be no such thing. So they bet $1,000 and I held, I guess it was, they each put up 500 and I held it in like an escrow, and then Malice was declared the winner and I released the money to him. So you think I'm joking, Jack, but this has been known to happen.
No, I don't think you're joking at all. Look, these people, I hate to say it that way. I'm not trying to diminish their humanity, which I never try to do. That's why I'm pro-life and, the immigrants and things like that. But these people really need to believe that Trump is Hitler or whatever they imagine he is. And worse than that, that the 77 million people who voted for him in 2024 are also that, when this actually your uncle, your aunt, or people in real life who are not Nazis, and yet they imagine this thing that's not there, and it makes them crazy. And it leads them to the point where they're saying, oh, he is Hitler. We got to have a No Kings rally to speak out against this. If he was really Hitler, that rally wouldn't have happened, first and foremost. But yeah, I think it's demeaning to the memory of the victims of the actual Holocaust to compare a Republican leader you don't like to one of the worst dictators of all time, and Adolf Hitler. Like if I was, Jewish, or my family had gone through some of that pain caused by this man and his awful party, I wouldn't want to hear that. I would be upset about that.
Yeah, and oddly, a lot of such people don't feel that way, and that's an oddball position to take. I agree with you. A weekend before last, I was at my high school reunion, And the conversation turned to politics with an old friend there who said that just within days, he had been visiting with family. And I guess it was I can't remember if it was sisters or cousins, it doesn't matter.
Mhm.
But they had an aunt who was 80 years old and ill, who had been nothing but wonderful to these two sisters or whoever they were of his. And they refused to speak to her because of her political opinions. I guess maybe she had voted for Trump. So she's dying. She's been nothing but a benefactor to them. She's 80, and they can't show her any grace whatsoever. That's basically subhuman.
That's what I was getting at about the hatred that binds them. And it's gotten worse and worse over the time. We've got about 10 years in on the Trump era, him being president and the MAGA thing being a thing. These people have gotten progressively worse in their hatred. And they would do things like what you just described and not see this 80-year-old woman who's dying and probably wants to see her loved ones. I've always said this, and I've said this before Trump. We should care about politics to the degree that we do because we have a certain idea of what's best for us and our neighbors and our loved ones on how to live, whether that's more government or less government, and we can debate and talk about that. When you get to the point where the politics is more important than the people you're supposedly looking out for with your political beliefs, you've got it ass backward. If you're not talking to your Uncle Freddie or your mom or your kid because they disagree with politics, or more likely the kid's not talking to their parent because they voted for Trump or whatever it is, everybody's got this backward. The personal relationships is the first part, the most important part, and the political stuff is trivial in relation to that. But to the point, and the right has been guilty of this too, the closest I ever saw was some of the things that people on the right would say about Obama. There's a lot to criticize, but they would make it into, oh, he's a socialist, secret Muslim brotherhood, blah, crap that you didn't have to say because the bad stuff was right there. Well, that's what the left's done with Trump. He's Hitler. He's this awful thing. And that hate binds them, and it binds them to the degree that they will eschew or ignore loved ones like that poor 80-year-old woman you're talking about who's on her last legs. That's awful.
Let's say a word about this young Republican group chat that got leaked, that in which I guess a lot of dark humor or what maybe you might say tasteless jokes or offensive jokes were being told in there. Now, I haven't looked through the text of it. I legitimately don't know what the nature of this was. What I know is that my friend Michael Malice, has a tendency toward dark humor.
Sure.
And humor that I wouldn't tell myself, but that's his thing, so I just know that's his thing. This guy was best man at my wedding, but I don't have to endorse every aspect of him. There are things about me he can't understand at all, but that just makes life interesting. So I don't know what the deal was, but the argument that J.D. Vance took some heat for was, we've just lived through, like 5 seconds ago, a case where the Democratic nominee in Virginia for Attorney General has more or less openly, I suppose that was also in a chat, but in effect suggested that it would be a good thing for his opponent's children to die, because then maybe he'd change his mind, or I don't know who his opponent is, on some policy. And Vance's point was, I'm not going to spend my time policing what is at least nominally my side when I keep getting shown over and over and over that the other side ain't just telling jokes here. Like this is way beyond jokes. Why don't we knock this off first? I have a guess as to where Jack Hunter came down on that. I didn't see, if you wrote something on it, I missed it. I have a guess, but I'm not going to tell you what it is. So what's your opinion on all that?
So a lot of the comments that were made in the group chat standing alone are pretty indefensible. Like most people with any kind of moral center would be like, that's bad, right? That said, J.D. Vance is absolutely right that people in private say things to each other. They know what's in their hearts and where they're coming from. They're not actually racist or malicious or whatever, wanting to kill politicians' kids, which is what the Democrat in Virginia's referenced. Are we going to just barge into everybody's private conversations who make jokes or say dark things or stupid things or indefensible things, whatever, and judge them on that and dictate their lives on that, what kind of jobs they can have and how they, can get along in life? I don't like that. I think J.D. Vance's gut impulse was absolutely correct there. I I have friends in DC that will joke about something, and like if it was held up for public ridicule, we look like jerks.
Yeah.
We're not expecting to be held up for public ridicule. And we've even said to each other, man, we should stop joking around like this. People might spy on us one day or something, just the environment we're in.
But Jack,
we'll stop.
Can you imagine, like, even just the average American, like not particularly engaged in politics, just the average American, if your private texts were made public, would you not panic and say, oh, good Lord, what did I say in there? Right? Wouldn't you? Like almost everybody, I would think.
Absolutely. I mean, think about couples dirty talk to each other or whatever.
Yeah, how about that? Or even like, oh, geez, now what was I thinking of? But even things like, I know what I was thinking. Pascal, which is not quite the same thing, but Pascal once said that if everybody knew what everybody else said about them behind their backs, there would probably not be 4 friends left in the world, you know? Yeah. So in a way, that's kind of related to this, that there are some things you say that you don't really mean. Like you might even say about a friend that you don't really mean, you would never want them to see that. And it's not really it's just, you know, it just came out or whatever. So yeah, I know people will come back and say, yes, a lot of people would be embarrassed if their text messages were revealed, but their text messages probably don't joke about Hitler or whatever the heck it is. Right. And I guess my answer to that is I just don't feel like the left's moral crusades about stuff like this are ever sincere. Yeah. They're not sincere. They have no principles on this. I mean, as we've seen, they don't seem to have any at all. So they're always just to be a bludgeon. They're never. This is never because they're deeply wounded and affected. It's always a gotcha. It's never a matter of if I come out and say, now look, my own side needs to be held to a higher standard. And it's outrageous what was said in that group chat. And we should absolutely repudiate these people and get them fired and make sure they never appear in public life again. That would not win me anything. Nothing. And you know how I know? Because I've watched people do that this past week. I've watched people say, we need to be honorable, this and that. And all the comments are, oh, you just haven't been caught yet, but you think the same things. So it's like, what's the point? Why am I bothering to? If these were people of goodwill, genuine goodwill, then I could at least conceive of saying, well, you know, you got us. That was really out of hand. But I don't see that. I see people who will not be willing to meet you halfway and say, well, it was very honorable of you to stand up and say, you know, I criticize the other side for this sort of thing, so I'm going to police my own side. They don't. They just don't.
Because they don't care, and that's not the purpose. It's what you
right. It's
said.
Not the purpose. Hey, everyone, if you're like me, you've been watching the Fed inflate the dollar into oblivion while politicians bungle trade policy and rack up historic amounts of debt, and you're wondering how to protect what you've worked so hard to build. That's why I want to talk to you about Monetary Metals, a company doing something truly revolutionary with gold. We all know gold is a safe haven asset, but let's face it, most gold just sits there in a vault, not doing much. It holds its value over time, but it doesn't grow. What if I told you there's a way to not only own physical gold, but also earn a yield on it, paid in gold, every single month? That's exactly what I do with Monetary Metals. I lease my gold with them and earn an annual yield around 4% in gold, not in paper currency. I keep my ounces, and every month I get more. Think about it. You still benefit from any price appreciation, like what we've been seeing in 2025 with gold pushing past all-time highs, and you also get paid more ounces of gold along the way. That's what makes this model so exciting. It's a genuine breakthrough. For the first time in decades, gold is functioning as a yield-bearing asset, just like in the classical gold standard days. The Fed can print dollars, they can't print gold. It's time to start growing your wealth in ounces, not just hoping for the best with fiat. Go to monetary-metals.com/woods to learn more and see how you can start earning a gold income too. That's monetary-metals.com/woods. Hey everybody, a little advice here from Old Woods. This open enrollment, don't make the same mistakes again, agreeing to overpriced premiums and fine print that generates unpleasant surprises at all the wrong times. The Woods family doesn't play that game anymore. Affordable Care Act, get out of here. We ditched the old-fashioned way and embraced crowd health, the alternative to the crazy American health insurance world. Otherwise, you sit there watching your premiums keep going up, You wonder what you're even paying for. And half the time, the processes are opaque and you have to hire a private detective to figure out what's going on. And if that doesn't sound appealing, and it doesn't, then welcome to Crowd Health, the health insurance alternative. We're talking health care for under $100. You get access to a team of health bill negotiators, low-cost prescription and lab testing tools, as well as a database of low-cost, high-quality doctors vetted by Crowd Health. And if something major happens, you pay the first $500, then the crowd steps in to help fund the rest. If this all sounds familiar, by the way, it's a little like the options we used to have before Obamacare messed everything up. And of course, you'll join the crowd, a group of members just like you who want to help pay for each other's unexpected medical events. The system is betting you'll stay stuck in the same overpriced, overcomplicated mess. And this year it's even more complicated because most of the Affordable Care Act subsidies expire, which means your prices are going sky high. This open enrollment, take your power back. Join Crowd Health to get started today for just $99 for your first 3 months using code WOODS at joincrowdhealth.com. That's joincrowdhealth.com, code WOODS. Crowd Health is not insurance. Opt out. Take your power back. This is how we win. Joincrowdhealth.com, code WOODS.
Right. They are so deeply wounded that over half of the country disagrees with them, elected Donald Trump, these MAGA people. They are so deeply wounded by that because they think they're so righteous and we're so bad, or the other side is so bad, or whatever. It means say we, because that's a little more complicated. That they're going to take something like this text thing. This was reported on by Politico of these Republican operatives or whatever, and say, look, this is what all of MAGA is. This is how these people are. Isn't this awful? They have no interest in telling that Virginia Democrat who fantasized about killing a Republican politician's kids, hey, that was bad, because that's their side. It has nothing to do with that. It's MAGA's bad. Here's another thing we can use to hit them with. That's all it is. It's not coming from goodwill, as you said. It's just another weapon, and they will find them wherever they can. The silver lining to this, Tom, is I think we've been on the other side of what some of us refer to as woke for about 4 years now. I always pinpointed as Dave Chappelle's special, The Closer, when he said like the most politically incorrect things ever, and like nothing happened and he didn't get canceled and they tried to cancel him, it didn't work. I think we're gone in the direction of a lot of people see this, the Politico story, the text messages, the awful, genuinely awful things that some of these Republican operatives said, and 4 or 5 years ago been like, oh man, those guys are cooked. I'm glad I'm not then. Now we're at a place where I think many are like, what are we really doing here? What is this? Why is this a story? Like, why are the people reporting this? Why do I know about it? And I think people are questioning these sort of woke narratives or these bludgeoning of the right by the left more than they used to. When I say people, not just conservatives or libertarians, but people in general. They're kind of seeing through the BS.
All right, now I got to get to the thing that, especially because of what you have in the background there, I got to say something about the attacks lately on Thomas Massie and Rand Paul. I mean, like, we're all probably tired of talking about this because this is so dumb and unnecessary. Massie and Rand, if Trump does something right, he will have no bigger supporter because they're both smart, for one thing. They don't just repeat slogans. They're smart defenders of the president when he does the right thing. But from time to time, you know, he's been known to do the wrong thing, and they can't be yes men. It's not in their DNA. They can't be yes men. So what we've seen, so we already know the president was unhappy with Thomas Massie. That's obvious. I made that video with Dan Smots called Thomas Massie's America First. If you haven't seen that, it's only about 12 minutes. You should go to massieaf.com. And I love that Massie's America First yields the acronym massieaf.com, because maybe that stands for something else, Jack, but all the same. But now it's Rand too. There was an attack on Rand that, he's not very good, and he votes against Republicans and this and that. I thought Trump's thing was that sometimes you have to vote against Republicans because Republicans are terrible half the time. In 2016, he was running against the establishment of the party, and those people didn't just disappear, Donald. That establishment of the party's still there, and they need to be stood up to, sometimes including you. Maybe that'll make you rethink things. Trump has rethought things before. Like he rethought whether it was a good idea to have John Bolton around, so his mind can be changed, and that's what they're trying to do. So we've seen these sorts of attacks on people who, the thing is, the MAGA people will join with Trump in whatever he says half the time, including these sorts of attacks. And yet, if I were to corner them, they would have to admit that if the whole Congress were Thomas Massie's, this would be a different country. Whereas if the whole Congress were Lindsey Graham's, it would be exactly the same country. You know, like everybody has to admit that. You know, unless you're a moron, everybody has to admit that. So what is this really all about then? Well, to some degree, it's a matter of Trump finds it difficult to deal with people who say no to him. But perhaps it's more than that.
It's personal for Trump, and which is a big problem. It's not ideological most of the time, certainly not with Massie. I think at the heart of this, we have to examine what is MAGA. I would say in a broad sense, and Marjorie Taylor Greene's also good about being clear on this. I think she's been very heroic in a lot of the things she's said and done in recent weeks and months. Less American foreign interventionism, border security, this Doge thing where we're going to radically downsize government. Those are some core MAGA things. Thomas Massie and Rand Paul are more consistent on those core MAGA things than Donald Trump has ever been. So you got people on the right who voted for Donald, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who say, hey, we wanted these things, and now you're doing the opposite, President Trump. And then you got other people that say, well, MAGA is whatever Donald Trump says in a given moment. That's stupid. That doesn't make sense. What MAGA person over the history of the movement would have said, I really think Donald Trump should get rid of this Rand Paul guy and this Thomas Massie guy and go fundraise for Lindsey Graham? Not many. You have to be in this weird moment right now where some people think that might be the thing to do if you're MAGA. But that's what's happening. Trump is insulting Rand Paul on Truth Social. He's still going after Massie and endorsing some candidate that's not going to go anywhere. And he's pairing up with people like Lindsey Graham, senator from my home state. That tells me for Trump, it's just personal. The last person he talked to probably has more influence on him than who's actually right or principled or good for him politically. So it's a big mess. Look, both Rand and Massie, when Trump achieved this peace deal with Gaza and Israel, both congratulated him and the deal and hoped it worked out for the best. At the same time, Trump was insulting them. You didn't see it much back. Massie can be a little smirky sometimes, and I'm glad he is because he's absolutely right. You didn't see Rand really attacking Trump or even Massie attacking Trump as the president attacked them. And they're also, praising Donald Trump, talking about Rand and Massie for this peace deal. So that's the dynamic for man in that situation, because it certainly isn't this president.
I can't help thinking, Jack, when you say that they're more MAGA than Trump himself on the key issues. I for some reason, this reminds me of something Laura Loomer said, of all people, because some time ago, I don't know, maybe 6 months or something, people were saying that Trump's tilt so heavily in favor of Israel is the opposite of America First. And she wrote, America First is whatever Donald Trump says it is. I don't know if you saw that, but she said America First is, well, then we had this thing about this Air Force facility for Qatar being built in Idaho. And she goes on Twitter and says, well, this base being built for them, that's the opposite of America First. And then everybody reminded her, America First is whatever Donald Trump says it is, right? So, but the point is, how could it be, right? Yeah. It has to have some stable meaning, right? It can't just be what one guy says or thinks at any particular moment. It has to have an objective meaning. And if it has an objective meaning, then these guys are your top allies. And again, if the Senate were full of Rand Pauls and the Congress were full of Thomas Massies, we would be out of these problems. They would be resolved. We wouldn't have to worry about them. So in that video that I made with, it was mostly Dan. I mean, I feel silly even taking the credit for it, but I did have my input, certainly. You look at Massie he's so solid on so many issues that most Republicans would, go crying home to their mommies about. Like he was solid with Merrick Garland and with the FBI about, did you have people entrenched in the crowds on January 6th? What was going on there? Like he was, a lot of Republicans just didn't want to touch January 6th. Very unpopular. They don't want to touch it. Russiagate. Massie didn't believe any of that either, even though some Republicans were made a little uncomfortable. Oh, gee, I don't know, maybe he does lean toward Russia. Massie didn't ever go for that stuff. And in terms of the COVID shots and gun rights, and you just go on and on and on, this guy will just stand there and take all the slings and arrows on issues that Republicans in general are totally unreliable on, but that their base really, really loves. So it is absurd that people have allowed themselves to be talked into the idea that of all possible people on this planet, Thomas Massie is their enemy.
Right. No, it's completely absurd for anybody who's actually principled and looking at this rationally. Look, going back to Laura Loomer, love that was thrown in her face with the Qatar facility.
I know.
The idea that whatever Trump says in any given moment is MAGA. Okay, President Trump tomorrow says, let's fire the border enforcement, get rid of the borders, and we got purely open borders. MAGA. I don't know any MAGA people, including Laura Loomer, be like, yeah, that's MAGA now, open borders. So
Yeah.
that alone proves that can't be the situation. Did you notice, Tom, Laura Loomer, Mark Levin was doing that. So a lot of the neoconservative friendly people, if we say, hey, Israel's government's getting too much deference from the U.S., we shouldn't be giving them money to do what we're doing in Gaza, they were sort of focused on Qatar. Did you notice that? Like the Qatar was the real culprit?
That was yeah. Which, I mean, every time I hear that country named, I immediately lower the person's IQ by 30 points.
Right.
Because if you're telling me that's the country that's really dominating American politics, a country I would be willing to guess a third of Americans have never even heard of. I know they can't find it on a map. They've never even heard of it. That's the how many politicians had their careers ruined because they said the wrong thing? It's so absurd. It's Mark Levin's favorite thing to say, but it's so absurd. It's like you don't even need to answer. Like, what are you even talking about?
It's stupid. He calls Tucker Carlson Tucker Cotterland or something stupid like that.
No, it's Carlson. So it's like Carlson.
Yeah, I mean, it's
such an idiot.
Really, and what amuses me about it. So they're so wrong in their positions and they're so wrong in their arguments, you can't argue them in a forthright way because they're so wrong. They do these other things that throw people off the track. Do you remember when Mark Levin and others would say, if you use the word or term neocon, you're actually being an anti-Semite?
That's what
meant.
Yeah.
And, well, they did for a long time. They've kind of backed off because Trump's used that word since.
Right.
Like, you don't hear that argument as much because it doesn't have power it once did. So this Qatar thing is their new version of that. Qatar, well, maybe I'm mispronouncing it. I say Iran and Iran. I don't know. But that's what this is.
Yeah. So, but all this stuff, I mean, I fought with Levin years ago, you may recall, over the subject of presidential war powers. So I'm quite familiar with the guy. And yet, during COVID, he was pretty good. He had Harvey Risch on from the Yale School of Public Health, and they did a fantastic interview. And it made me think maybe the guy's gotten better. Because I'm always looking for reasons for hope, Jack. I want to have a reason for hope, but it's turned out not to be that way. Because the thing is, if I were I am not a partisan of any foreign country. I'm a partisan of them all in the sense that I favor friendship with them all. But I don't pick one out or say, well, I'm from this country or I'm ethnically related to people in this country, so therefore I have to obsess over it. I would think that was weird. I would think I should probably keep my ethnic hatreds out of American politics because it should have nothing to do with Americans. Well, anyway, let's say I was a partisan of one particular country, and I noted that public opinion toward that country was starting to shift and was starting to become more and more negative. I would have two ways of approaching this. Like, number one would be to go on a charm offensive and to make the strongest case I could for the value of this country vis-a-vis the United States. And by the way, I could make an excellent case for Israel. I don't believe in it, but I know the other side's arguments of any argument I'm in. I know the other side's argument. I could make a great one. And I would make some TV commercials and whatever, and I would just focus on the positive. Like, this is a really, really important alliance, and we can't let it slip out of our hands, or we can't let misconceptions get in the way, whatever. The second approach I could take is to demonize everybody whose mind has changed, or to demonize everybody sitting behind a microphone who doesn't share my opinion. And people like Levin, it is amazing to me, overwhelmingly they've taken approach number two, which is absolutely guaranteed not to work. I mean, nobody being called an anti-Semite is going to suddenly say, you know what, you're right. we do need that Israel alliance. Like, absolutely no one.
Yes. And Levin's just revealing himself more than he ever has. I mean, he's gone after me for years, certainly Rand Paul. You've had your tussles with him. In the Bush days, when we were definitely in the minority, and I mean, we anti-war libertarians, me and you and the Ron Paul people, before Ron even ran for president in 2008, we were in the minority. Neocons kind of ran things. I think they could be put into two categories that, in retrospect, we can see more, but didn't see enough at the time. I think there were neocons who genuinely thought our foreign interventions would bring democracy to these countries that had never known it. Like, Vermont would be in Iraq somehow magically. I don't know. And then there were also just the Israel first people, and their Israel first alliances or intentions with, we're going to make the world safe for democracy. Mark Levin has always been an Israel firster, and he's been used on the American right to being able to massage his language in a way where his audience and many on the right, the grassroots right, are going to go along with what he's saying, because he could say, if you use neocon, you're an anti-Semite, or whatever arguments he's making. We're at a point now on the American right, and this is a positive part of MAGA, where Tucker Carlson's a hell of a lot more important on the right than Mark Levin is at this point.
Yeah.
And people like Dave Smith and people like you, and voices that are just the complete opposite on the right of Mark Levin and his neoconservative brand. That's why he acts out at Tucker and other people. He knows he's lost his power, his grip, his sway, in a way that he's not accustomed to. And even worse, the anti-war people who used to be able to hold at bay, who David Frum once called unpatriotic conservatives, and you will find no daylight between Mark Levin and David Frum on foreign policy and those kinds of issues. They can't keep them tamped down anymore. Worse, you have a president of the United States who's called them neocons and awful. He's inconsistent on it. But we're just in a completely different place. And that's why you see Mark Levin, as you pointed out, Tom, doing the same old nasty stuff that isn't working now and will continue not to work in the future. But he's going to keep doing it because it's all he knows. You can't teach an old dog new tricks, and he's an old neocon dog.
Well, with that, RandPaulReview.com is where you can find more from Jack Hunter. But also, they can follow you on X. And how can they do that?
You can follow me at Jack Hunter 74 on X, where I do movie reviews for Modern Age. I write for Responsible Statescraft, a lot of non-interventionist stuff there. Washington Examiner, The American Conservative, all sorts of things I'm doing. Jack Hunter 74 on X. I share it all there.
Excellent. All right. Well, I'll link to that at tomwoods.com/2702. Jack Hunter, thanks a million.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for listening in. Don't forget, join me for the best vacation ever, TomWoodsCruise.com. See you next time.
Make yourself and those you love less vulnerable to the regime, both mentally and physically. Get more forbidden information at tomsfreebooks.com, and be sure to subscribe to the show wherever you listen. See you next time.
Like the sound of The Tom Woods Show? My audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.